Huawei. Is that how you pronounce it? Huawei. All right, now, Michael Danby, you have been a pretty big critic of China. There's divisions inside both parties about this, isn't there? On the Labor side, there are critics of China and there are strong supporters of China. On the coalition side, same thing happens. What's the essence of your criticism?
Well, there's a difference between opposing Chinese direct investment in Australia, which I strongly support and I think we should be absolutely colourblind over, and I encourage as much as Japanese and American investment, and I think both parties should do that, and I think certainly the government does, and an organisation which, on a risk-based assessment by the Australian government, after receiving advice from ASIO and other intelligence services, has decided not to let this company bid for the spinal cord of the Australian telecommunications system.
So what do you think we should do with them as a company?
Well, we should encourage them to be involved in other things, but we shouldn't let them be involved in the central nervous system of Australian telecommunications. And frankly, the opposition are hopelessly divided over this. There's George Brandis and Philip Ruddock on one side, and Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop, despite all of these revelations that were in the Financial Review on Friday by the former director of the CIA, General Hayden, blithely saying that they're going to have a review into whether the Huawei should be involved in the NBN. And what this is, Peter, is lowest common denominator, no national interest, no interest in national security, the lowest price wins the bid as far as some of the Liberals are concerned.
Stuart, Robert, how do you respond to that? You come from an army intelligence background, as I understand it. What's your view on Huawei?
Well, our view is you actually take the professional's word as it comes. So if the National Security Committee has actually put together a brief to the government that we haven't seen, that raises concerns, they need to be listened to. So one of the first things we'll be doing, if we are to win the election, is actually look at that advice that has come from the National Security Committee and from the national security community, and we'll make an assessment based on that advice.
Now let me bring the panel in on this. It is both sides of politics are divided, Peter Bentley. I know that Michael Danby likes to make it a message about the coalition, but both sides of politics are divided in terms of how we should approach China, as well as how we should approach some Chinese government-owned enterprises, including Huawei.
I think if we're looking at Huawei and others that have strong links to the Chinese government, obviously, and I agree with Stuart's point that we need to let the professionals in terms of ASIO, ASIS make recommendations. They're doing that to government. When it comes to national security, that's vital. But I think there is kind of a broader issue that we have to be aware of, that we aren't seeing either xenophobic or even competitors at a local level trying to paint all Chinese corporations in that space. And we've seen that at an agricultural level, with Chinese investment seeking to make significant investments in agricultural lands. We've seen that in a whole range of different kind of fundamental service sector roles. And for a country that is seeking more foreign investment, this is how we have historically grown over the last 200 years, and particularly being so well placed as we are in the Asian century, I think we have to always ensure that there are legitimate debates to be had, and we should have those, but we shouldn't ever let this flow over into tarring all Chinese corporations or all Chinese companies, because not only does that have a detrimental impact for the Australian national interest, but it also has problems with our trade relations in the long term.
Hugh McDermott?
Yeah, China, the US and the other countries are vital and important parts of our economy, as we are as part of the global economy. So, you know, what the key thing here is national security. Now, whether it be Chinese or whether it be Indonesian or any other country, it doesn't really matter, including the US. If our national interests are questioned on a national security basis, then yes, we should intercede. But, you know, if it doesn't, then we should promote more foreign direct investment. And, you know, that's really what the debate is about here, is that we want more and more investment. And China is a key part of our economy, but we just have to make sure that when companies do come in and they do win contracts that impact on our national assets, that there isn't any security issues with it. And if there is, then they need to be removed.
All right, Michael Danby, final word on this subject?
Well, you know, I'm I think that's a very sound point of view, that we ought to have a colourblind attitude to Chinese investment in Australia, including in agriculture. But Stuart got off too lightly, and his right-wing mates may be sort of twittering here in his support or tweeting in his support. But the coalition is absolutely irresponsible in the way they would allow the NBN to be accessed by Huawei. Can you imagine?
Well, hang on a second. Let me go to Stuart Robert on that. I mean, isn't your point, Mr. Robert, that pending getting in government, you will take a look at the sort of references that Michael Danby has referred to, and that could be up for review, but it would take you to be the incumbents to make that sort of a decision?
In opposition, you don't get the opportunity to be briefed by the head of O&A or the head of DSD or DIO or DIGO or the full intelligence community. So if we are graced with government, we will sit there, listen to, take heed of and respect the full national security advice we get.
That's a fair point, isn't it?
Aren't your guys speaking to you? You know, Julie Bishop and Malcolm Turnbull both got briefings from the Director General of Security because they regarded this issue as so serious. And even after that, they said that there should be a review of whether Huawei is allowed to bid for the NBN. And only this weekend, despite the intervention of General Hayden, former director of the CIA, saying that this company was a danger to national security in this narrow telecommunications area. I accept the point about being open to Chinese investment in other areas.
The Chinese ambassador, though, has come out and said that none of this is true.
Well, for a start,
what would
Michael,
you expect him to say?
There is no Director General of Security. There's a DepSec Security Intelligence. There's a Director General of O&A. They're some of the, or two of the most senior people in the community.
Well, I'm sorry, it's a common expression, Stuart.
Understand the community you're talking about.
Don't be you're too nice a guy to be a smart aleck on this. That's a common way of referring to the Mr. Irvine, who's the head of ASIO, who you know very well has met with your Julie Bishop and Malcolm Turnbull.
But hang on, let me ask you this question, Michael Danby. Let's leave that as a comment. This is the comment from the Chinese ambassador. Facts speak louder than words. There may be some people doing things the article referred to. This is about Huawei's activities, but it is not Huawei or China for sure. That's the ambassador.
Huawei has a Communist Party committee that is the head of the company. It is considered a national champion and gets $30 billion of soft loans a year. Why do you reckon the Chinese state is doing that? Because they're a charity?
All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. Peter Bentley and Hugh McDermott, you guys were strongly advocating for a Kevin Rudd comeback. Do you sit here very smugly next to your Labor mate, Michael Danby, and say, what the hell were you doing back in Julia Gillard?
No, not at all. I mean, I came out and supported Rudd some time ago and got a bit of stick for it, especially from Gillard's office. But no, I mean, members of caucus have to make a decision of what they see there and then. I'm from Western Sydney. I was representing my membership in Western Sydney, and I'll say this: they were saying Rudd. Now, people in Victoria and other places were saying the opposite. So,
So is Victoria in for a tough time, Michael Danby, at the next election, having lost a local Prime Minister?
Look, of course, people were partisan for Julia Gillard in Victoria, but I also think that the polls are up everywhere for the Labor Party, including in Victoria, for Kevin Rudd, and we're competitive in marginal seats in Melbourne, which we might not have been aiming at beforehand. So Stuart will need to come and visit the southern states a lot more and spend less time in Queensland, and I'm going up to the Queensland coast along with a lot of other parliamentary secretaries and ministers to try and take some seats off them. That's what the Prime Minister thinks can be done.
Stuart Robert, are you worried about the coalition party room having reduced representation from Queensland no matter what happens at the next election? Because even if Labor does lose and go down fighting in states such as Tasmania, New South Wales and Victoria, it looks like Kevin Rudd has the capacity to draw on a bit of parochialism in your home state and pick up a few seats. I'm
looking forward to coming and debating Michael Danby in Melbourne Ports after that kind invitation. I'm looking forward to coming and seeing Nick Champion in South Australia. And now that 40% of all Australian-made cars which are sold through employee share schemes are now at risk because of the FBT cuts, I am certainly looking forward to the opportunity to debating after that lovely kind invitation from my good friend Mr Danby.
I'll come and host it. Sounds great.
People.
I'll come and host it and watch a footy game while I'm down there.
This is from the guys who want to cut $500 million from the auto industry as part of their plan.
Well, hang on a sec. Peter Bentley, let me ask you about the fringe benefits tax announcement. The word is that Treasury had had been bowling this up time and time again, and even Wayne Swan could see what was wrong with it and wasn't prepared to embrace it yet. Voila! In comes Chris Bowen and Kevin Rudd, and they go for it.
Well, Peter, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, this is a streamlining of an entirely sensible
People
policy.
have already lost their jobs because of it.
Well, Peter, this is the whole point that we need to remember with this debate is this isn't money that's just kind of appearing that's subsidising people's tax bills. Whenever people get a write-off and a tax concession, all the rest of us that aren't benefiting from that are paying for it through increased taxes ourselves or through lost services. Now, if you have a legitimate reason to be claiming that for work purposes, that's fine, but it's not particularly onerous to say once every 5 years for a 3-month period, tell us about it. Now, if you think that is so onerous, then I think it's a pretty fair bet that you're rorting the system.
But they're not rorting. Right. There was a rule in place that you could take a 20% claim without providing any evidence via a logbook. That's been adjusted.
Absolutely.
It wasn't a rort, it was the way the system was.
No, this is my point, and let me be very clear. I'm not accusing anyone previously of rorting, but I'm saying if you are in a position where you say it is so onerous over every 5-year period to spend 3 months logging what you're doing with your car, that is so onerous that I'm not going to claim this deduction, then I would say there's a pretty fair chance that you weren't entitled to it.
We are right out of time. Last comment, Hugh McDermott.
I will say it is a rort. There's been plenty of tradies and other people doing these logbooks for years. When I had a car, I used to have to do the logbook and that for the union. The reality is that if you've been claiming this, then you shouldn't have been. Now, I think it's absolute crocodile tears. No, wait a sec. Let me had your say. Crocodile tears for the Liberals to be going on about the car industry. They were going to destroy
I
Holden.
have a 10-second countdown, and we are out of time.
As it go along. What you guys need is a plan, a real solutions plan. That actually might
there you
help
go. You got it on screen.
Take you down to the Holden factory.
All right, explain to the time out there. Stuart Robert, thanks very much. Stuart Robert, thanks very much for your company.
You can explain to that, Joe.
We're going to go to an ad break. I'm just going to thank all 3 Labor people at one time. Thanks for your company. See you on Friday for